Welcome to the Truro and Colchester Chamber of Commerce Business Voice podcast. In the coming days, we will be hosting discussions with candidates from all three ridings in Colchester County to learn about their perspectives on issues presented through the lens of business. The Chamber represents more than 450 businesses in the Truro and Colchester region and has been the recognized voice of business for 131 years. Normally, when an election is called, we would welcome candidates to debates and town hall sessions. But this year, due to COVID-19 and public health restrictions, we have chosen to err on the side of caution and host one-on-one discussions with our candidates. Our members have had an opportunity to submit questions in advance on topics of importance to them. This series of podcasts for the 41st Provincial General Election are brought to you by the Nova Scotia Association of Realtors. All right. So today we'd like to welcome Tamara Tynes Powell, the Liberal candidate in the Truro-Bible Hill-Millbrook-Salmon River riding. So welcome, Tamara.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, well, let's start off and learn a little bit about you. Tell us about yourself.
Well, I always start off from when I was a small child. For me, it's very important. It's where my love for politics was created. You know, at age 5 years old, sitting around watching the members of parliament, debate out the things that go on in our country. Seemed boring as a child, but realized later along in life, it really created my passion, which falls between politics and social justice. So I had always had a desire at a young age to kind of follow in my father's footsteps and my grandfather's footsteps. I look at them as both being political and social justice advocates in the community. I always felt that I was that third generation. So for me, it was very important to leave Truro, gain my education, gain some really good career skills, personal life skills, move back home, and put my foot forward to do better for my community.
That's amazing, and we are so thankful to have you here with us today to share your perspectives on some issues. So we poll our members on an ongoing basis with our membership of about 450 members in Truro and Colchester. So the questions that we're going to ask today are topics of great importance to the business community. So let's start off with this one. Many of our businesses across every sector are experiencing a lack of human resources to fill labor gaps from skilled to unskilled. What is your party's plan to address this critical need to fill employment vacancies?
So the pandemic really put a lot of families in challenging places. I always feel that families are really the foundation of the communities. They're the ones who foster our businesses, create our businesses, keep our businesses growing and employed. The pandemic really put us in a difficult position because a lot of people, employees of a lot of these businesses, found themselves in very difficult situations. They were struggling between kids being sent home and doing homeschooling. Some employees, because of the way their businesses are developed, were allowed to work from home. Not all employees could. The recovery after the pandemic appeared to be a little difficult for families because as businesses were opening back up, childcare and school services weren't as well. I do feel that more support for families will help in the human resources gap because families are just trying to recover in order to get back to work. So for example, you have individuals who now might be called to go back to work because their business is open. Do they have childcare? What are those arrangements for their home life? So that work-life balance, I think, during the pandemic has really showed us that home and families affects our businesses. These are the heart of our businesses. They're our employees. They're our business owners. They're trying to provide for their families as well as sustain their businesses. One resource that I feel that we really have that we need to maximize on are the amount of people we have coming into our province through immigration. We have some amazing skilled people out in our communities that if we were able to match up these skills with the businesses that are needed, especially where we're at a time when we're recovering from the pandemic, we're trying to open back up. This is a great chance for us to realize where were those cracks in the system before the pandemic began. Human resources is big because it provides our employees with that comfort that I can have an employment job that's going to provide for my family, but I can also sustain my family too. I really think that the $10 a day childcare is something that will help. A lot of families literally have to struggle between, do I have enough to pay rent or mortgage, or can I pay for my childcare? You can't go to work and leave your children home unattended. And I think when we get back to that basic of families can be supported and provided for, they're only going to be more able and more willing to enter back into the workforce and help some of our small businesses grow. But until we can get our families secure with what they need to have that comfortable and secure home life, our businesses will be affected. So we really need to support families to get back to work and help support the children as well by making sure they're provided for, whether it's $10 a day childcare, whether it's looking at if we were to go into a fourth or fifth wave of the pandemic, how would we be able to support these families, these employees, so that our businesses can stay running and functioning?
Wonderful. Thank you very much for that answer. Another topic that's very near and dear to the hearts of our membership is physician recruitment. And we know that physician recruitment is directly tied to the economic growth in this region, and the lack of access to family physicians is having an impact on the overall health system. It's been a challenge for our businesses to recruit new employees and retain employees because of the lack of access to family physicians. So what is your party's plan to address this?
Okay, so the Liberal Party does have a plan to invest, let me get the exact amount here, $12.2 million for physician training. So that's specifically at our Dow Medical School. This is something that our province needs to use as a resource. We have a top-notch medical school that students come from all over to study medicine in this province. It would be a shame if we couldn't do something to actually recruit and retain some of the graduates who come from this school. That to me is absolutely first. Also, there has to be a way to attract our physicians not just into the core of the province, so specifically HRM. It's our busy, bustling urban area, but our rural communities need doctors. You have a lot of people, for example, you have people who take daily medication. And because they don't have a family doctor, you can't just go to a walk-in clinic and get your refills for your prescriptions. But you can't just go to the emergency room, and expect that the doctors and staff there, who are extremely busy being worked off their feet, to now be dealing with patients who just need daily medication refills. So not only do we need better doctor recruitment, we also need more support for those other medical professionals on the front line. They're really picking up the brunt of where we're lacking with our doctor recruitment. But I feel that that investment into our medical school, like I said, top-notch, Dalhousie Medical School, we have great professionals, great doctors that come out of there. We need to retain them more. I personally believe that, again, family is the foundation. These doctors are people who have families, who need to be able to not only have a job in their profession, to feel valued by their worth of pay, but also their families need those supports. So what kind of communities are we creating? Again, we need to go back to creating environments for stronger families, smaller businesses, all of those things that would want to make people move to Nova Scotia, stay in Nova Scotia. We need to show them that this is where you want to raise your family. This is where you want to practice your profession. These are all the wonderful people we have, but look at all the rural communities that we really need. We really need physicians. And I really feel that not only do we need to focus on making sure that we have well-paid doctors and professionals, but we also need to make sure that we focus on family doctors. Family doctors are really, I feel, the key of getting us out of this slump. When we have family doctors in our rural communities and they can get the basics like their refills on their daily medication, that to me is a good sign that everything else in our medical system will follow in the right path.
Great. So I guess let's talk about, I'm say, the impacts of COVID. So we know with the pandemic that spending and investing in relief programs was necessary to help the community move forward.
Right.
But it is a major concern for business, with the highest taxes in the country in Nova Scotia, the cost of COVID. So when the relief measures are wound down, how will this debt be repaid?
Okay, so basically when I looked at the party's platform, it appears to me that we were definitely in a position, and not just us, obviously, as Nova Scotians, as Canadians, as human beings on this world, we were all faced with this pandemic. Nova Scotia actually made sure that we looked after our people. There were many families out there who literally would have lost the roof over their heads if it wasn't for the supports that our government put in. So there's always going to be cost with that, but it will never be more than the investment that we've made into our people to make sure that now that we are recovering from the pandemic, people are at a position where they can start back to get to that new normal, to go back to work, to send kids back to school, to be able to pay their bills confidently. I believe that based on the amazing resources we have as a province and as a country, I believe that just some of those will pay for itself. For example, you look at the rates of the interest rates across the world are actually now lower. The lowest I believe they've been since the 90s. So I feel that if Nova Scotia specifically even just focused on our biggest resources, for example, agriculture and our seafood, we should be able to have enough to be able to pay for the costs that we had to pay out to make sure that families stayed secure and stayed safe during the pandemic. Because again, without those families, without those individuals, we would not have a workforce. And although our businesses and our communities, our economics have suffered during the pandemic because we really didn't have a choice but to shut down in order to get it under control, Nova Scotia is really in a very strong position to make sure that those costs are paid for, just based off of the resources we have. I feel that the Liberal government was very focused on making sure that not only do we want to make sure our businesses are able to reopen and recover, but we need those employees there to make sure that the businesses can thrive. So yes, COVID cost, but if we didn't put out that cost, it would literally cost us more because we would not have the human resources, we would not have the people to be able to be in positions to come back to work and reopen our economy.
You touched on the next topic in that answer about housing. We know in this region there's a number of developments that are proposed, some have been approved, and there is some housing coming online for the community. But the reality is here that we have like near 1% vacancy rate, which is extremely low. Purchase and rental housing supplies are near historic lows in Nova Scotia. How will your party increase the supply to ensure that there's a healthy housing mix that includes the entire spectrum from community housing, rental, and home ownership?
So this is an area where collaboration and cooperation has to take place, because I do not believe that it is strictly on the provincial government. I believe that all levels of government have to work together in order to address the housing issue. So for example, if you compare an area like our riding, Truro-Bible Hill-Millbrook-Salmon River, to riding within HRM, where it's urban, it's big, it's lots of tall buildings and new skyscrapers going up all the time. The majority of structures such as that do not accommodate individuals who struggle financially to find housing. I use that as an example because, for example, if you compare that to our area, so even specifically within Truro, you have developments that have to follow by, for example, even how many levels they can have in their building. So what is the cap, 4 or 5? So if you wanted to create a building that maybe had 10 levels, we have rules and regulations set so developments cannot be built that high. It's the same in Halifax. You have to be very careful of where you're building high-rise buildings, because there will be disagreements over the view and the landscape of the whole downtown. We need to look at that more in terms of what are we allowing to be built in our communities, and who will be able to afford to live in these areas. What I see to be happening is a lot of our new buildings that are going up are not affordable for the average family, are not affordable for the average senior living on a fixed income, which the majority of seniors are. We need to partner with municipal and we need to partner with federal. We need to make more housing developments with more specified allotments for people under a certain income. And again, that's not only with families with young children, but that's seniors as well. But when it comes to families with young children, one of the biggest issues that I hear coming out of this area is a lot of families with young children are being turned away from housing. This is actually a violation of the Nova Scotia human rights legislation. And a lot of people would tell an individual like that, why don't you go to the tenancy board and file a complaint? But when you are a family who needs a roof over your head, are you going to take the time and take the extra money to file a residential tenancies application? Or are you going to do everything you need to make sure that your family doesn't go one night without a roof over their head? So these are families with children, and these are also seniors who do not have places to live or are forced to live in establishments that have bed bugs and cockroaches and landlords that make promises of improvements and never do. These are the conditions individuals in our communities are living in because there's not enough affordable housing. I don't feel there's a need for that. There should be affordable housing, but there needs to be cooperation on all levels of government.
Very well-spoken answer. Thank you so much, Tamara, for your very well-spoken answers on those questions. I guess, is there anything that you would like to share in closing?
I feel that it is very important for me to share in closing that I come from a mindset that government needs to work together and be cooperative. It doesn't matter what political background you come from, what party you represent. At the end of the day, all of us, from whatever political background we come from, we want to see Nova Scotians thrive, and we want to see a better environment for Nova Scotians in general, for Canadians in general. One of the things that's important to me to bring to the table is an example of communication and cooperation among government. It's a skill, a very strong skill I have. And it's one of my experiences that I feel when I bring it to the table, if I am elected as MLA, I will continue to be a strong example of how government should all work together, communicate, and thrive for a better future for all of us Nova Scotians.
Great. Thank you. The Chamber would like to thank all the candidates who made time in their busy schedules to come in and discuss important business issues with our Chamber, to bring these to our members in this format. We'd also like to give a huge thank you to our sponsor, the Nova Scotia Association of Realtors, who made these podcasts possible. We encourage everyone to get out and have your voice heard by voting in the election.